We'll ask Brian Yates to read or to tell us about the procedures to make sure that everybody on the call is aware of how we're going to do business today. Brian?
Thank you, Kyle. This is Brian Yates with Swartz, Page & Harding. As Kyle mentioned, welcome to the Montgomery County MUD number 7 Board of Directors meeting for Tuesday, May the 18th, 2021. As in prior meetings, I'll briefly go through our remote meeting procedures and then perform a roll call. So to begin with, I need to remind everyone the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Next, please remember to state your name before you speak, include the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we'll continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely today so that we can accurately reflect the attendance in the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by staff and consultants. When you hear your name or your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for directors, staff, and consultants, I'll ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. So starting with our board of directors, Kyle Mays.
Here.
Paul Nelson.
Paul Nelson, present.
Henry Cheek. Absent. Don Sarich.
Present.
Stephanie Zertucci.
Present.
Okay, that completes the roll call for our directors. We do have a quorum present. We will move on to Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson.
Present.
Mike Mooney.
Present.
Maureen Bourgeois.
Here.
Jeannie Scott.
Present.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Present.
Anyone else from Woodlands Water in the meeting?
This is Henry Cheek. I just got in.
Okay, welcome, Henry. All right, if there's no one else from Woodlands Water, we'll move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelling.
Present.
Ed Shackelford. Is Ed in the meeting?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Chris Meeks.
Present.
Matt Corley.
Present.
Anyone else from the River Authority in the meeting?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to MUD 7 consultants. Do we have any MUD 7 consultants in the meeting? If not, we'll move on to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting? We need to identify you for the record as well.
David Gates, resident.
Joe Klemick, resident.
Damon Palermo, resident.
This is Brian. Any other members of the public present in the meeting? All right. If not, Maureen, does that cover everyone who's logged in?
That's everybody.
Okay, that will complete our roll call. Kyle, I'll hand it back over to you to begin the agenda. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. That's going to bring us to item 2, which is to receive comments from the public. We do have 3 of our MUD residents joining us on the call today. If you'd like to make a comment to the board, you have 3 minutes to kind of share what's on your mind. Anybody want to make a comment to the board today?
Well, sure. This is Joe Klemick, and we are at 58 West Lake Mist Circle. And, you know, we've been reading the new developments for what's going to happen behind our home, I think it's Branch Crossing. But, you know, we wanted to kind of explain that we flooded here several times. Back in 2001, we flooded from our back and the front, and 2008 from the front, May of 2015 from the front, and then April 17th of 2016 from the front. And then Harvey, we didn't flood, but we're finding it like in yesterday's rains, we had water well into our backyard. So we're really excited to hear about the developments of what may be coming with, with widening the stream behind our home, deepening it, possible retention ponds. We think it's an incredible must, especially with all the development that's going north of 1488. We're really concerned with the additional runoff is going to happen. So we thank everybody for inviting us to the call today.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Anybody else like to make a comment?
Yeah, this is David Gates, 50 West Lake Mist Circle. I also want to say, everything that Joe said, but, we're the original owners since 1992, and we have water in our backyard every year, just about. And we had water come halfway up our yard yesterday. And, I'm getting too old to keep moving furniture upstairs. Some prior hurricanes, we moved a lot of furniture upstairs and just getting too old for that. So, I was glad to see that something finally is going to happen out behind our house. So I'm all for it. And plus with this issue with subsidence, I think it's only going to get worse in the future.
All right, well, that's very good feedback. Thank you. Mr. Palermo, did you want to make a comment to the board as well?
Our physical address is 62 West Lake Mist. And we, my wife and family sincerely appreciate all of the good work that San Jacinto River Authority has done. And of course, the Woodlands Water in their respective scopes. We are concerned about the area in the back. It's beautiful. It serves its purpose in terms of absorption. And in learning, we're very much interested in learning more about retention and some of the proposed improvements to the area back there that still maintain it in its natural state, but also afford it with greater capacity, hopefully to detend or retend some of the storm runoff. Thank you.
Very good. Well, the details of what it's going to look like will obviously be fleshed out in the weeks ahead or months ahead. My guess is it won't look the same if the channel is widened to 40 feet and deepened. They'll have to lose some trees in the process. But I'm guessing for folks that are dealing with water in their backyard and even worse in their homes, they're willing to give up a few trees back there in order to have a deeper, wider channel taking more water away from your homes. Is that a fair assumption, gentlemen?
I think that's true. We lost a lot of trees in Ike. I couldn't even begin to count how many, but I will say that they came in with the chippers and they did a great job of cleaning it up. And that was a significant improvement. We did see water moving a lot faster after that. So, there's a lot of dead trees back there now that need to go. And I know that we've made contact with the San Jacinto River Authority to let them know that.
Yeah, this is Dave Gates.
Go ahead.
I don't have any problems with that being 40 feet. I think there's enough open space behind our house that, there won't be many trees affected right behind our house. So that's not a problem.
All right, gentlemen, that's very good feedback. Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Then, all right, then we'll move to item 3, which is consider and act on request for adjustments to or relief from the specific charges. Anything?
This is Jean. I don't have anything.
And this is Mike. I have nothing this month either.
All right, very good. That takes us to the consent agenda, items 4 through 7. Review and approve minutes, financial reports, tax collectors reports, kind of our standard attendance and expenses for various Woodlands water related meetings and trustee business. Any questions or discussion about these 4 items in the consent agenda?
This is Don Tarek. I have a quick question on expenses on page 5. The water service repair, 384% higher than, well, that's the year-to-date variance.
I have one word, TACUS.
Is that what that is?
That's
I guess
exactly-
that's service that have been damaged.
Yeah, that's, Don, what that is TACUS is cut a bunch of homeowners' private lines and also our service line. We've got a couple of invoices prepared, we just have not received payment from their contractors yet.
Thank you.
Makes sense. Good catch, Don. Thank you. Any other questions for the staff on any of these consent agenda items? If not, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Nelson.
Paul Nelson,
I'll
second.
Don?
This is Kyle Mays. I vote aye. Kyle Mays, I vote aye. Paul, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
And Stephanie, how do you vote?
Aye.
Don, how do you vote?
Aye.
Henry, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. Takes us to item 8 for the San Jacinto River Authority report.
Good evening, directors. This is Matt Corley with the San Jacinto River Authority. Page 14 of your packet should be the Woodlands Monthly Operations Report, data for the month of April. I'll highlight the surface water to groundwater blend ratio fiscal year to date. That's September 2020 to April 2021. We are at a 48% groundwater to 52% surface water blend ratio. I'll be happy to answer any other questions regarding the report you may have.
And this is Ron Kelly, if I could add, one other thing is, I know y'all been faithfully following the travails of the desired future conditions that have been proposed with GMA 14. As you know, we're in the 90-day comment period, which ends middle of July. And so the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District is going to be conducting a public hearing. We haven't set the exact date, but it's going to be supposedly either June 7th, 8th, or 9th. We know that you have an item on your agenda later in this meeting, and we appreciate any written comments that you provide, either letters, notes, emails, resolutions, but it's also equally important that folks show up at the public hearing and make public comments as your 3 minutes of fame, I guess you might say, because sometimes that takes more weight than a stack of papers, is actually having people show up and comment, whatever those comments may be, whichever side of the line you fall on, those comments are important in the evaluation and moving forward to development of these DFCs. And as you recall, then later in October, the GMA 14 will actually vote on those proposed DFCs. And I'd be happy to, just like Matt, questions on the actual report, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the DFC process.
This is Ed Shackelford. Jim's got in his GM report a summary of the Trinity River water supply options, and we made a presentation to the trustees, and happy to give you all a more in-depth conversation, but our board is asking for input from the trustees and the MUD boards to determine whether you all are interested in the long-term water supply Trinity River water option, and to cut to the chase on dollars, from 2021 to 2028, it's a possible 10-cent increase per month per customer. And after 2028, it's approximately a quarter per month to maintain that option and start making that a viable long-term solution to add to the water supply.
But Ed, that you're not talking construction, you're just talking about the efforts to.
That includes interbasin transfer permitting and pipeline between Lake Livingston and the upper end of Lake Conroe.
Lake Conroe.
Well, wait, Ron, is that?
Go ahead. I was just wondering if you.
Well, that quarter is just for the permitting.
Okay.
And,
my apologies.
Planning.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I thought so, Ed. I mean, but it's also, my question was on the interbasin transfer, just curious, since there's not a lot of them, this will be an in-house thing with consultants, so there'll be consultants that lawyers. Yeah. Well, yeah, lawyers, but
lawyers and a small number of engineers, but the estimated cost for construction will be an additional $200-300 million.
That was in the report that you had in the,
yes, sir.
Packet. Well, I don't want to do it tonight, Mr. President, but I wouldn't mind hearing that, because I think there's a lot of confusion about Lake Conroe and who owns what, and how long that's going to last and when this would be started and all that. I think it'd be good for the board to hear that. That's my personal opinion, but like I said, not necessarily tonight. That work?
Well, I'm guessing that our SGRA friends could give us a pretty quick overview on the Houston option that we have currently, and then the Houston water rights that we currently have paid to have an option for, and then you could probably give us a pretty quick update on these Trinity River rights as well.
Good. I'm happy to do it tonight if they are.
If you would like, I can pull up the slides on the Trinity River and we go from there. It's up to y'all.
I'd like to have that.
Okay.
Let me get that up and share the screen with y'all. Can you?
We got it.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Is it the full slideshow or just the? Okay.
It's not in presentation mode. It's just in regular.
Let me get it in presentation mode. If I can see, I can't see anything. So.
There you go.
All right. So. Here's the issue. It's a 50,000 acre foot TRA option that we've had since 2013. As you all know, the county is growing, the water demand is growing. Numerous different supplies will be necessary to meet the population demand and the water demand. Our contract, well, let me get to this slide. As you can see, that if you look at the Montgomery municipal column or line, the growth is, that's where the growth of the water needs are. So in 2030, we need roughly 141,000 acre feet of water. And in 2070, we need roughly 286,000 acre feet of water. Currently, Lake Conroe generates 100,000 acre feet per year. This is the basic concept of how the water would be brought from Lake Livingston to Lake Conroe. 50,000 acre feet is roughly 45 million gallons a day. It's firm water. It'd be an interbasin transfer. There would have to obviously be pump stations, pipelines, and canals. You heard me mention the estimated cost is $200 to $300 million construction value. So our current option contract with Trinity River Authority requires us to create a service area agreement at an estimated cost of about $250,000. Well, we're paying $250,000 roughly a year, but the deadline to create that service agreement is December of 2021. We need to initiate an interbasin transfer permit and all the associated paperwork and get that complete by April of 2028, and then convert that service area agreement into a water supply contract that has a reservation fee of roughly $1.5 million annually. And then begin either taking water or paying for water that we're not getting. So here are the numbers that I mentioned to you. This is on the raw water side of what it would cost, and then on the GRP side for what it would cost. So if you look at the bottom bullet points where the dime and the quarter are, potential increase above the GRP rate based on production of 30 million gallons a day. It's roughly 1 cent per 1,000 gallons for 22 to 27. So, and that's, you know, we assume 10,000 gallons monthly usage per connection. So that's where the 10 cents come from. And then we said roughly a quarter for 2028 and after. And that's also based on the 10,000 gallons per connection. We're needing to make decisions July or August. Our board is needing to make decisions by July or August so that we can decide how we're going to act by December of 2021. So we're asking the trustees and the various MUDs and the Woodlands to either send written comments or verbal comments, come make a presentation to our board to say, yes, you're interested, no, you're not, because this is, you know, we're planning for the future and trying to secure a water supply for beyond our lifetimes. And it's not something that is going to be readily available 20 years from now because other people may want this water. So we're looking for input and guidance.
Well, this is Kyle Mays. Did it say in your presentation anything about the option that we have to expand the access, to exercise the option to pull additional water from Lake Conroe? Was that part of?
Well, this would be beyond being able to use all waters within Lake Conroe. So okay. Currently,
I think it would be important. I think it would be important in the presentation to just go, you know, this is what we have in Conroe currently, and you know, this is what we could expand to from Lake Conroe, but this is where we're going to max out on our Lake Conroe capacity, and when we might be faced with needing this Trinity River water. I think knowing that there's some expansion potential in Lake Conroe is an important part of the conversation.
And agree. A lot of it depends on how much water can be withdrawn from the aquifer, which is, you know, that is still an unknown at this date with Lone Star's rules. But you know, knowing that Lake Conroe's both SJRA's ownership and Houston's ownership only gets you 100,000 acre feet. And in 2030, we need roughly 125,000 acre feet. And we're relying on a certain amount of water, you know, call it 64,000 acre feet or up to 97,000 acre feet, depending on which DFC is chosen to generate groundwater supplies. So we know 2040, 2050, we're going to need water beyond what the aquifer and our current Lake Conroe supplies, both Houston and SJRA's supplies, can produce. And that's where the additional, I guess my point is
it would help if like in 2040 or wherever, 2030, somewhere in there you said, okay, out of this 167,000 acre feet, we expect 100,000 of it's coming from the lake, 67,000 is coming from the aquifers. Therefore, that's the point at which we would, need to be getting a new source or have it ready even by then.
Understood.
Good.
Appreciate the comment.
Could I help on that to give you an answer? If you go by the current proposed DFC of about 97,000 acre feet of groundwater, if that is what is used in the county, and you take the 100,000 acre feet of yield, paper yield that is in Lake Conroe, that's around 200,000 acre feet, okay? Which is about 2050. So what that shows is that you have enough water between groundwater and surface water in Lake Conroe out to 2050. And as Ed said earlier, this is water that's sitting out there, beyond 2050 that you need. Does that help?
I think,
yes. If you need it in 2051, then when do you have to start putting in the pipelines and start getting the lawyers involved and finding the
10 years prior to that
stuff?
10 years, right?
10 years.
10 years probably. I just wanted to point out that, like you both all said, I think that's important about Lake Conroe to do that. But I think also it's important, like Ed said, that the Trinity River Authority happens to be sitting on a lot of water, and it's allocated now. We have the opportunity to hold that water, but it's not just our area that's growing, and there's going to be more and more demand on that water. And the longer we wait, or if we put this off and kind of sit till we really need it, there's a real good chance that it either won't be available or cost a whole lot more. So I think that's important for us to stress to our folks.
And then the other thing to stress, and I apologize for not mentioning it, this cost is shared across the entire SGRA. It's in the raw water, it's built into the raw water system. It's also built in the GRP rates. So it's our industrial customers would share in the cost.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Obviously, we would entertain any questions and would appreciate any, I'll say, opinion the board has and offer that to our board. Thank you.
All right, any questions, comments, opinions for our SGRA friends? Then that would, let's go ahead and move forward to item 9, which is to receive and discuss SGRA Woodlands Division budget.
Sorry about that, I was on mute. All right, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So it is that time of the year where we've compiled all the data and all the project plans and level of service detail and guidance and whatnot. And we are back with the proposed draft budget for the MUDs, for the Woodlands Division. Excuse me. So a couple things before we get started. This presentation is included in a package that's on the Google Drive. It'll have an executive summary, this presentation, and each of the line item detailed budgets for O&M, R&R, bond funds, and future facilities. So all that information is on the Google Drive for you to go through in as much detail as you want. There is no action that we're looking for tonight. This is the first proposal to bring to you. And the first time we'll be looking for any direction will be in July, when the MUDs will direct their trustee on how to vote at the August trustees meeting. So a couple other things real quick is the GRP rate has not been approved by the GRP review committee. That is on the agenda for their May 24th meeting next Monday, or I guess 2 Mondays. But so, what is next Monday? So anyways, Once they vote on that, if they do, they're right now currently looking at reducing the proposed rate from a 19-cent increase to a 15-cent increase on that rate. If they do decrease that rate, the Woodlands Division budget will be affected and a new budget will be presented to the MUDs showing that reduction. And we hopefully will have that within a couple of weeks of the GRP review committee voting. The last thing is the way we've set up the budget presentation this year is we've kind of flipped it. So we get to the punchline at the beginning and then we go through the detail at the end. So what you're going to see is, as we move along, is the first few slides are basically the takeaway slides. Talks about what we did and how we did it, and then what we ended up with. Everything after these first few slides is just going to be basically detail of how we get and how we develop the budget. So after the first few slides, I'll take a quick stop, a pause, and ask if y'all would like me to go further into the detail, or we can stop right there. Either which way is fine. So as you can see on this slide, one of the first key items is demand trends are flat in the Woodlands Division. For roughly the last 3 years, we have not been seeing an increase in demands based on weather, low flow toilets, lack of future growth or current growth and everything else. Demands are pretty much staying consistent. We are also looking at a 65% groundwater, 35% surface water blend ratio. We're also proposing a 5% increase on water and wastewater rates, mostly due to the ongoing renewal of the aging water and wastewater system that we've been chatting about. We're also proposing to increase the funding to the R&R by $500,000. And then of course the O&M reserve and emergency reserves are fully funded. Go into a little bit more detail about the wholesale water rates. Next slide will be wastewater, but on this slide, we're talking wastewater or talking water. Wanted to show you all the last 5 years of actual rates and rate increases over that 5-year period. Then of course, what is proposed in comparison for FY22. So as you can see, there was a couple years, 18 and 19, when there was no rate increase, followed up by 4.3, and then proposed this year a 5% increase on the water side. That 5% increase on the water rate equates to 11 cents per 1,000 gallons. Looking at the wastewater side, this is the same information as the previous slide showing the last 5 years plus the proposed for FY20. It is also showing the 5% proposed increase, which is 23 cents per 1,000 gallons. And then the other component of the Woodlands Division budget is the GRP fees. So what you see here on the bottom in the blue on the bottom right, that $3.07 is the GRP fee, the surface water conversion fee, the blended fee, goes by many names, but that is the rate that the Woodlands Division charges to the MUDs and the MUDs pass along to the end user. That rate of $3.07 is also the rate, as well as the two above it, that the GRP review committee is looking potentially to reduce by 4 cents. So that will be hopefully voted on May 24th at the review committee. So that's all the high level in items. If you want, I can continue forward, or at this point, I can just open it up for questions and stop the presentation. So ask you what you would like me to do.
Any questions on the budget process or details for Chris regarding SGRA budget?
Okay.
All right. I guess we can move on unless there's anything else you'd like to highlight, Chris.
Everything's in the packet. So if you go through and you have some questions, let me know in between now and the next meeting or at the next meeting. I'll be glad to answer what I can.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. That'll bring us to item 10, which is the attorney's report. Brian?
Thank you, Kyle. Brief update on the legislative session. We are down to the last 2 weeks, so there's a lot of activity. It's pretty much 24/7. 7 days a week at the Capitol from now until the end of the month. If there are particular bills that you're interested in, as I mentioned last month, that bill tracker has a hyperlink to the Texas Legislature online. So you can click on those bills and it updates in real time each day on the status of particular bills, where it may be in the legislative process, whether it's in a committee hearing, out, if it's up for a floor vote, if it's been approved, enrolled, engrossed, et cetera. So we're kind of getting down to the very end on the session. One bill that was passed recently, House Bill 1118, relates to cybersecurity training. That bill has already passed. It clarifies who is required to complete the cybersecurity training. You may recall from a couple of years ago when the initial cybersecurity bill was passed that the language of the bill itself did not seem to indicate that directors that did not have any access to a government computer system or database that was susceptible to a cybersecurity threat would be required to complete cybersecurity training. However, the Texas Department of Information Resources, that's the government entity that was tasked with implementing the cybersecurity training requirements, took a extremely expansive interpretation of the bill language to require that all government officials, including MUD directors, complete the cybersecurity training regardless of whether they had access to a system that was susceptible to a cybersecurity threat. So that's how a number of MUD directors were caught up in having to complete the training this last year. Legislature did not agree with that interpretation and overrode the Texas Department of Information Resources this session by passing a cleanup bill, essentially, that says that if a government officer or elected official, such as a MUD director, if that government official has access to a local government system or database and uses a computer to perform at least 25% of their duties as a elected official, then you are required to complete the training. Now, for the vast majority of our MUD districts, that's going to take out directors from the compliance requirement. Woodlands is a little bit unique, as it usually is, where you have a Google Drive and we have electronic distribution of documentation, be it board packets or supplemental materials or what have you, that directors may be using for a quarter of the time that they spend doing district business. So I think as a general rule, directors in the Woodlands should continue to complete their annual cybersecurity training. But if individual directors are confident that they're not spending 20% of their duties using that local government system or database, then you would not need to comply. But ultimately, it's not a district compliance requirement. It's a director compliance requirement, similar to your obligation when you first come on a board to complete the Open Meetings Act training and the Public Information Act training. But that, of course, is one time. This is an annual requirement. So my guidance to directors in the Woodlands is, when in doubt, complete the training each year. But if you're confident that you don't meet that 25% threshold, then you would not need to complete the training. Bear in mind also, as we talked about when the bill originally passed a couple of years ago, that there is no enforcement provision associated with this requirement. There's not if you don't complete it, you're fined or you have this or that. Currently, and in this amendment, there are no compliance penalties or failure to comply penalties. So that's kind of where things stand with cybersecurity training. To the extent that you do complete the training, continue to provide your certificates of compliance or evidence of compliance to Shelley, and she'll put those in your director files, and we'll continue to move on from there. That's all I have of a general nature under the attorney's report. Happy to answer questions if you have them.
This is Kyle, and I feel very comfortable that I am below the 25% threshold that requires cybersecurity training.
Very good. Well, if y'all have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, that will conclude my report.
All right, that brings us to item 11, which is consider an act on resolution regarding the DFCs for aquifer management in Montgomery County.
This item was presented in a very similar form, actually the exact form, to the trustees last week. The discussion about developing a unified, consistent message by our MUDs actually started last month. We had a couple of MUDs that had it on their agenda, and they put pause on acting on it to give other MUDs a chance to look at something that might be passable and acceptable, and also to have the Woodlands Water Agency trustees weigh in on this. So the trustees did unanimously approve this resolution last week, and it was recommended that it be put on all of the MUD agendas this week to, again, to try to demonstrate a unified and consistent message from our MUDs to Lone Star and the community on groundwater management.
Any questions for Jim regarding the message of this resolution?
If it is approved, we'll be forwarding it to the Lone Star Groundwater District prior to their DFC public meeting, and encouraging other entities around us to consider something either like this or similar to this.
All right, well, if there's no questions, then would anybody like to make a motion that we approve this resolution?
I would like to make that motion, Mr. President. Paul Nelson.
Thank you, sir.
This is Stephanie. I second that.
Thank you, Stephanie. This is Kyle Mays. I vote aye. Paul, how do you vote?
Aye.
Stephanie, how do you vote?
Aye.
Don, how do you vote?
Aye.
Henry, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item 12. Consider an act on providing storm drain markers.
Mr. President, before
waterway pollution.
Yeah, I'd like, before you move on, I would appreciate it to kind of reiterate what Mr. Stinson said. I know that through these resolutions and discussions and presentations, we've reached at least 50 MUD directors. But I think it's important that we as MUD directors and our MUDs, that we kind of spread this concept and this document to others who are going to suffer the same consequences if we don't do something. In other words, kind of spread it out for others to participate in, whether it be entities or organizations or just our friends and constituents, so that they can help convince Lone Star and the GMA that this is something that we're all concerned about, not just this board. So I just wanted to say that, and I appreciate the opportunity.
I agree. My only, my suggestion though would be maybe have Jim or somebody draft a layman's version of this. It's obviously written for attorneys, whereas this, whereas that. And so I don't think it reads really well for sharing with the community broadly. And it'd be great to have a plain English version if if we were going to really try and spread it around and get more people to understand what's going on.
I agree. And we, again, don't need to resolve that. We can talk with Mr. Stinson about finding something that would be a better use for the public.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate your suggestion. Any other comments on that? Questions? Let's move to item 12 now. Consider an act on providing storm drain markers to reduce waterway pollutants for community volunteer projects.
The MUDs have a history of several of our MUDs of funding markers for storm drain projects. If you looked in your packet, you saw, I think it says no dumping drains to waterway or no waste, but we support this effort. The township has received a number of volunteer groups wanting to do something like this. And I'm just requesting that all of our 10 MUDs agree to contribute up to $1,000 a year for the markers and the adhesive for these this stormwater marking project. It would come out of your storm sewer maintenance budget.
Any questions or discussion?
I would, again, just would like to support that. We have the Woodland and Green volunteers. We got the Girl Scouts. We have a Boy Scout or Eagle Scout projects in the township, and a whole lot of volunteers trying to send the message that whatever goes into those drains ends up in the Spring Creek and or the bay. So I'd like to
or Lake Woodlands.
Yeah, before you get to the other one, you go to Lake Woodlands first. Yeah,
right.
True. Anyway, I would just like to support it and would make a motion that we expend those funds.
All right, I agree. And we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Don.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to resolve that we provide storm drain markers. And this is Kyle Mays. I vote aye. Paul, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
Don, how do you vote?
Aye.
Stephanie, how do you vote?
Aye.
Henry, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 13, receive staff information on Bear Branch, Panther Branch Research Forest drainage improvement concept. And I believe this is what our public speakers and guests were referring to with their support. So Jim, would you like to address, I mean, you're aware of that particular part of our MUD and the issues that we've had?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I got a call, or we got an email, I think, from Joe Klimek yesterday regarding the water that he was observing in the floodplain area behind his home. And in responding to that, I said, by the way, you know, we actually got a funding request approved, or a funding assistance request approved by the Water Development Board last week. I did present that information to the trustees and am actually going to talk about this at the MUD 7 meeting today. So that kind of prompted, I think, Joe and others to join, because their inquiry was timely. But what you've heard me talking over the last, gosh, year or more regarding MUD 67 taking the lead to see this application through the Water Development Board, and much to our happiness, did get approved. I mean, there were many times along the way we didn't think we could get there, but it did get approved for, it's about an $11 million project. It would be receiving a little over $1 million in a grant, an outright grant, and then a 30-year zero interest loan or bond issue for the remainder. And in looking at the Bear Branch portion over the last month or so, I visited with our drainage consultant and with the desire to also do some improvements in the Panther Branch portion. And we think we can get that done within the application funding amount. And if I could, I want to share my screen with a drawing. Maureen, can you let me share my screen with this group?
Yes, that's ability is already available.
Okay. Here is the conceptual drawing of the project. If you can see my pointer, I'm starting up here in the top, the Panther Branch. This is the Mud 7 area, Lake Mist, Mystic Lake. We're looking at least about a 2.3 foot reduction in the water surface elevation in this area. Here is Trillium area, going to be substantial reduction in the high water elevation here. So these areas are definitely benefits to Mud 7. In addition to having research forest open, typically research forest goes underwater here and goes underwater here during these major rain events. So with a project would ensure that during what we call a typical 100-year event, what we've experienced at least 4 or more in the last number of years, this street or research forest would remain open. That's a major thoroughfare carrying traffic from the I-45 back to the far west end of the woodland. So we see that as a benefit, not only to Mud 67 and to the Mud 7 residents, but also maybe to the county and the township, the fire department for sure, and law enforcement and emergency service vehicles. So I think you could see a benefit to that. Down here along the Shadow Point area would be a big improvement to the Mud 47 residents in this area. So I had a preliminary discussion last month with Mud 47, and they, I guess unofficially, have given their support to participate in this. And what I'm asking today is just your support. If I can report to the Mud 67 board tomorrow that we had a discussion and that you can see some benefit to your residents and do support us moving forward with looking at what a funding participation arrangement might look like between Mud 47, Mud 67, and Mud 7. And I'll also let you know, I'm gonna share stuff. Well, another drawing that we're looking at that could include, here's a drainage area map. There's a portion of Mud 60 that drains into Bear Branch. So it might be where they could be a small participant in this as well. These are drainage areas for this area of Bear Branch and Panther Branch. So I think the takeaway is we're looking at potential funding partners from Mud 67, Mud 7, Mud 47, maybe Mud 60, Montgomery County, and the township. At this point, again, I would just request that you acknowledge that there is some benefit to your residents and let me continue to work on what a funding partnership might look like with the various MUDs.
Jim, do you know where they would haul all that dirt from the dredging and clearing of the detention ponds and so forth?
I do not. But I will also say we have a meeting set up. There's still a number of components of this to come together to make it work. The detention areas that were shown on the first screen I shared are actually properties owned by the Howard Hughes Corporation. They are floodplain properties, not developable, but we would need to acquire that land from the Howard Hughes Corporation. And I've got a meeting set up with them Friday of this week to try to develop a path, what that might look like going forward to get that accomplished. So the preliminary feedback has been positive from them on this effort as well.
Would we also need to acquire, sorry.
Go ahead,
we also need to acquire the land within the Bear Branch from SGRA?
No, I've got ongoing discussions with San Jacinto River Authority, their flood management division, regarding an agreement. We wouldn't need to acquire it, but we could get some sort of agreement where we could do the work. And we've had discussions that can happen. We just have to work out the details.
Just in case there is pushback from people who don't want to see the trees get cut down, which I can imagine might be an issue. Have we been saving pictures or videos of these high water events? I mean, I think it'd be great if we had pictures from Mr. Klimek and others, you know, who've had this over and over, you know, that we could just have as kind of evidence of why we need to do this.
We do. I know Joe and his neighbors have some pictures, but we also have a pretty large collection here. And the intent, as these pieces come together, would be to hold neighborhood meetings in the areas where the improvement would be occurring and get feedback from the community. Rather than one large meeting, we would probably break it up into 3 or maybe even 4 neighborhood meetings to talk about the benefits.
Excellent. Any other questions for Jim on this issue? Comments? Alrighty, then Jim, you're still on with the general manager's report, item 14.
Very good. Just a recap from our trustee meeting. We had a request from our trustees and others to start looking into how we might ensure getting some of the monies that might become available from the American Jobs Plan, the recent program that's being worked on by the Biden administration. So I've had some discussions with SJRA, and we'll be looking at potential consultants to help us make sure we don't miss an opportunity to get funding for certain large projects through that plan. There was also a report by me and Dr. Neil Gaynor regarding the efforts to get a voting member seated on what's called now the Upper Watershed San Jacinto Regional Planning Group. Stephanie, as you remember, was supported by your MUD and the others to be an alternate for that position should we be successful in getting Neil seated to that. So there's been some delays and frustrations, I think, in that process, but it's still going forward. We hope to be successful. In your packet is a monthly report from HARC on our consortium agreement. I did report that the effort to work with concerns of neighbors that regarding the AMI poles that were constructed adjacent to their property is ongoing. I actually have 2 alternate locations that have been identified and they're on park sites. One is Forest Gate Park and the other is Sawmill Park owned by the Woodlands Township. So those sites are being vetted. The Spring Creek engineering study, the interlocal agreements have been signed on that, and SJRA has taken the lead on selecting consultants for that next phase of detention study along Spring Creek. We talked about the Trinity River Authority water supply agreement. We also discussed at the trustee meeting the 10-man improvements for your wastewater treatment plant 1. The preliminary engineering report is in on that. River Authority were given directions to go and kind of fine tune the options that were laid out by Kimley Horn. And Chris Meeks also brought forth a additive that has been used by some of our neighbors that actually is improving odor control. And so the trustees authorized him to go ahead with that effort. There is the update on our social media public information outreach in your packet. And each month at the trustee meeting, we have an agenda item to discuss efficiency within our organization. And Maureen took the initiative to put together a number of efficiency topics and efficiency operational improvements that she has been a part of. So in your packet, please take a look at that. I think you should find that helpful. And we continue our efforts with TACUS to recover expenses. Our attorney is working on setting up a meeting with the 5 prime contractors to start going through the reimbursement in detail for damages. And that concludes my report, and I'm available for questions.
Any questions for Jim?
Quick question. Update on the antenna relocation. I see a letter in here on page 37, but where are we headed on that one? I guess I might. Woodlands question, I'm not sure.
Well, for the AMI antenna?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two neighborhoods that residents have expressed strong opposition to the pole locations being so close to their rear yards and impacting their view. So I am looking at options. We're looking at, if we relocate those, what would the cost be? If we relocate them, would other residents be impacted? Can they be painted? Could they be?
Yeah, I see there's some. This was a new twist, and I was just wondering where we're going. Or
the end. What I've reported to over the last couple of months is that at some point I'll have some options for the trustees and the MUD directors to look at, and there will have to be a decision made if we do anything. Do we paint them? Do we move them? Do we do nothing?
This is just an update on where we are, I guess.
That's right. This is just a progress, kind of a FYI of the types of information that I'm collecting. At some point in the near future, I hope to lay it all out and let the trustees and the directors make a decision.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Jim? So that was a very thorough report, Jim. So I'm not going to try and add any details to it as the item 15, Woodlands Water Trustee for MUD 7. So we'll move on to item 16, which is to discuss any matters for placement on future agendas. Anybody? All right, then, with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thanks for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good evening.
Thanks, Kyle.
Night.